Good evening, sir. Good evening.
Hello, Sudhakar. Hello, Sudhakar. How are you?
Great, sir. Thank you very much. Great pleasure looking at you. I'm sure you're speaking from your cabin at the Parliament, or it looks a little different.
It's my study. I'm speaking to you from my study.
Your study.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good afternoon to you, sir. Your time is now afternoon. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us. We are equally delighted along with our participants today. We'll quickly start the session. I will do a brief introduction and then hand it over back to you for your opening remarks, sir. Kindly allow me to share my screen. WiseViews Leadership Conversations, we have been hosting every Friday. This is the 121st Leadership Conversation, and we are truly delighted and honored to have Lord Karan Bilimoria for this session. We are going to talk about India's G20 Presidency, what's next for India. So this introduction followed by opening remarks from Lord Karan and two clusters of Q&A, and then we'll sum it up. Hopefully, everything we'll do in an hour or just 10 minutes, plus or minus. Not minus, but plus. Lord Karan Bilimoria is a successful entrepreneur. He's the founder of Cobra Beer, chairman of the Cobra Beer Partnership Limited, which is a joint venture with Molson Coors. In the Monday selection, one of the most prestigious quality awards in the world for beer, the Cobra range have collectively been awarded a total of 131 gold and grand gold medals since 2001, making it one of the most awarded beers in the world. Lord Bilimoria is the founding chairman of the UK-India Business Council, a deputy lieutenant of Greater London, a former chancellor of Thames Valley University, which is now University of West London. He was the youngest university chancellor in the UK when appointed. Lord Karan was a former senior non-executive director of the Booker Group, now Tesco PLC. He is one of the first two visiting entrepreneurs at the University of Cambridge. He is a founding member of the Prime Minister of India's Global Advisory Council. In 2006, Lord Karan Bilimoria was appointed the Lord Bilimoria of Chelsea, making him the first ever Zoroastrian Parsi to sit in the House of Lords. In 2008, he was awarded the Pravasi Bharati Samman by the President of India. Lord Karan has been awarded honorary doctorates from various universities, including University of East Anglia, University of Birmingham, Brunel University, Cranfield University, University of Exeter, Heriot-Watt University, London Metropolitan University, Staffordshire University, York St. John University, University of West London, Thames Valley University, and of course, University of Westminster. He is an honorary fellow of Sydney Sussex College, Cambridge, and was chair of the advisory board of the Judge Business School, Cambridge University from 2015 to 2020, and subsequently appointed as an honorary ambassador. He is a qualified chartered accountant FCA with Ernst & Young and graduate in law from the University of Cambridge. He is also an alumnus through executive education of the Cranfield School of Management, the London Business School, and the Harvard Business School. In July 2014, he was installed as the 7th Chancellor of the University of Birmingham, making him the first Indian-born Chancellor of a Russell Group University in Great Britain. And he is the President of the UK Council for International Student Affairs. Since 2017, Lord Bilimoria has been a Bynum Tudor Fellow at Kellogg College, University of Oxford. Earlier in the career, Lord Bilimoria was an honorary group captain in 601 Squadron Royal Air Force. In June 2020, he was appointed President of the Confederation of British Industry, CBI, for a 2-year term. He is now Vice President until June 2023. In September 2020, he was appointed as Visiting Fellow at the University of Oxford, based at the Center for Corporate Reputation. This is an amazing profile. We couldn't have got a better one for speaking on this amazing topic today. I will take a moment to introduce my esteemed colleague, Professor Prasad, the Director of Academic Wing. He brings 3 decades of rich experience with himself as an entrepreneur, as an academic, and before that, as a corporate leader. He holds a BTech from IIT Bombay and PGDM from IIM Kolkata. He published several papers, books, and presented various conference papers in conferences in India and abroad. With this, I'll stop sharing my screen. I once again invite you and thank you for agreeing to speak with us. So over to you, and we are quite eager to understand and learn from you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sudhakar. If I may just share a few thoughts with you over the next 20 minutes, and then I'd be happy to have a discussion with you. For a start, it's a great honor for me to be with you at the WiseViews Leadership Conversation, and that too at the 121st such conversation. And thank you to you, Sudhakar. Thank you, Professor Prasad. I was born and brought up in Hyderabad. I'm a proud Hyderabadi. I attended my first school in Hyderabad. I thereafter also later went to the Hyderabad Public School, HPS in Begumpet. And I was very privileged that in July this year, I was the guest of honor at the centenary investiture ceremony, which was one of the most nostalgic, memorable days in my life, where I was so proud to see my old school flourishing and going from strength to strength with facilities that are world-class, including an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And the alumni of the Hyderabad Public School, it's just tremendous. Ajay Banga, the president of the World Bank, Satya Nadella, the chief executive of Microsoft, and I could go on. So many alumni from this one school in Hyderabad in India, now being world leaders. I was also very proud to study at Osmania University, where I graduated in my BCom honors from the Indian Institute of Management and Commerce. 3 very happy years, after which I came to study in the UK. And I must say that being a person of Indian origin here in the UK, one of 1.7 million people of Indian origin in the UK, one of 30 million people of Indian origin around the world, I'm so proud at how well the Indian community is doing here in the UK. We are by far the most successful ethnic minority community, reaching the very top in every field. Let's go no further than our Prime Minister of Indian origin, Rishi Sunak. In fact, in 2002, when I was very privileged to have been appointed Asian of the Year, the Home Secretary at the time, David Blunkett, gave me my award. And in my acceptance speech, I said, in my lifetime, we will see an Indian, an Asian, as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And it took 2 decades, but it happened on Diwali Day last year, on the 23rd of October, and Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister of this country. I was proud that this country, the UK, gave me the opportunity, after I finished my studies, to start my own business as an entrepreneur, to start Cobra Beer, which is now a household name in the United Kingdom. Without exaggeration, it is available in every corner of the United Kingdom, in the rural areas, in the urban areas, in restaurants, 7,000 restaurants, and over 10,000 supermarket and off-license branches, and exported to 40 countries around the world. It is, I would say, and I'm boasting, but I boast with pride, the most famous Indian brand, Indian consumer brand in the UK by far. And that's a matter of great pride for me. But of course, where does one get one's inspiration from? And I've been very lucky that in my own family, my great-grandfather, my mother's grandfather, Didi Italia from Hyderabad, was an amazingly successful individual and someone who's inspired me all my life. And his motto was to aspire and achieve. And in fact, I've adopted that as my motto and my coat of arms at the House of Lords. I joined the House of Lords 17 years ago, and I was the 3rd youngest member of the House of Lords when I joined. You get a coat of arms, and my motto is to aspire and achieve, which I took from my great-grandfather, Didi Italia. And in fact, my motto for my company, Cobra Beer, is to aspire and achieve against all odds with integrity, because it is all, entrepreneurship is all about problems, but finding solutions and acting quickly, coming up with ideas, wanting to get somewhere with the idea, having little or no means, having all the odds stacked against you, and then going out there and making it happen. But most importantly, making it happen with integrity, doing it the right way, playing with a straight bat. And I was very lucky to have been inspired by my great-grandfather, who was a great philanthropist, a very successful entrepreneur, a great public servant, and a member of the Rajya Sabha, the equivalent of the House of Lords in India. And here I am 4 generations later, following in his footsteps and joining the House of Lords, being an entrepreneur, and in doing the charitable work that I do, as well as, please forgive me, the dogs in the background, they will be in and out of my study, and you will just have to bear with that, I'm afraid. The other person who inspired me greatly was my father, Lieutenant General Karan Bilimoria, who was in the Gurkha Regiment, commanded his battalion in the liberation of Bangladesh, and also then became commander-in-chief of the Central Army in India with 350,000 troops under his command. And I learned so much about leadership from my father, about how to this day they talk about him and talk about him in such a wonderful way. Young officers who met him when they were lieutenants or captains, and he was a senior general, who are now generals themselves, and remember that 1 minute or 2 minutes they may have had with my father, and that made such an impression on them and inspired them. So I'm lucky to have had that opportunity to be inspired by two great leaders, my great-grandfather, Didi Italia, and my father, Lieutenant General Karan Bilimoria. And in my instance, where leadership is concerned, I've realized that to build a team, to build a diverse team, the more diverse your team is, with different mindsets, different backgrounds, different cultures. And India is just such an amazing country in that sense. It is the most diverse country in the world by far, whether it's in religions, whether it's in terrain, whether in every way, India is the most diverse country in the world. And I think that's one of the reasons for India's success is that diversity, because Deloitte, for example, have conducted research that shows that more diverse organizations are innovative and therefore more successful. And India is a giant example of that diversity creating enormous success. And if I now talk about the success of India in terms of where it is today, where it was when I was a child being brought up in India, with a country that was inward-looking, that was protective, that was a closed economy, an economy that was not growing, consumers starved of choice, where you had an option of 3 models of cars, of an Ambassador or a Triumph Herald or a Fiat, and that too 1950s models being sold right up to the 1980s, where you had to wait 1 year to get a telephone line. Consumers were not in charge. You had a closed economy and very, very little competition, very little enterprise. And it is when India liberalized in 1991 that India's entrepreneurial spirit was unleashed. And it took about 10 years, and then India started on its growth path. And India's entrepreneurship now is visible for anyone who visits India, a country that is absolutely booming and buzzing with potential and buzzing today with achievement. And when it comes to education, I was very lucky to have a great education here in the UK. And now for the last 9 years, I've been Chancellor at the University of Birmingham, the 3rd largest university in the UK, a Russell Group university. That's our Ivy League here in the UK, and also a top 100 ranked university in the world. And we have several research relationships in India because we've seen the power of cross-border collaboration when it comes to research. The field-weighted impact is 3 times higher than, or 4, in fact, 5 times higher than a university doing that research on its own in its own country. And so at any one time, we have 40 collaborative projects in India on different areas, whether it's air pollution or agriculture. For example, in the state of Telangana, we now have a wonderful initiative with the University of Birmingham and the state of Telangana and business, GMR involved in it as well, launched by my dear friend KTR, the minister, just recently. And he said that this is such a great example of what Hyderabadi, who's gone to the UK, can do for his home city and his home state. And this is about cold chain. And this is about advancing cold chain so that farm produce, so much of it, which gets wasted now in India and never gets to the market, through cold chain technology, where we have one of the leading professors in the world at the University of Birmingham. We're now working on implementing that technology, starting in Hyderabad and Telangana, and then rolling it around the state, around the country of India, thereby making sure that that harvest and that fresh produce doesn't rot and gets to the market, to the consumer. And this will be huge, huge benefit to the Indian economy in the years to come. And that is thanks to academia, cross-border collaboration, University of Birmingham, UK, and the state of Telangana and Hyderabad, and the private sector being involved as well. when it comes to climate change. If I give you a quick example at COP26, when I was president of the Confederation of British Industry, I took an active part at COP26, and I was very proud that we could showcase there the world's first retrofitted hydrogen-powered train, which was developed by the University of Birmingham in conjunction with business, the rolling stock company, Porterbrook, Siemens, a great engineering company, as well as the UK government helping, and business, government, and academia, world-breaking, world first, the world's first retrofitted hydrogen-powered train, Hydroflex, which was up and running in Glasgow at COP26. And I was on that train. His Royal Highness at that time, the Prince of Wales, now His Majesty the King, was on that train. And our Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, was on that train. So this is the potential that we've got to harness. And I'm, as Sudhakar announced, I'm head of the international students. I co-chair the all-party parliamentary group on international students. I'm president for UK Council of International Student Affairs. And I'm so happy that now Indian students have overtaken Chinese and are now the #1 largest number of students from anywhere in the world are Indian students coming to study at UK universities, which are the best in the world, along with the United States of America. The collaborations go even further. I'm proud to say that in February, I launched a collaboration between the University of Birmingham and IIT Madras, a joint master's degree, 18 months in AI and data science, where the students enroll in Chennai, the students enroll in Birmingham, and they physically spend time in each other's campuses during those 18 months, and they come out with a joint degree from 2 of the leading universities in the world, University of Birmingham and IIT Madras. I was in August speaking at the B20, just before the G20, and when I was president of the CBI, I was privileged to chair the B7 before the UK hosted the G7. And I know how much goes in to organizing these events. And I was very proud of what we did with the B7. I had the head of the WTO, I had our prime minister, I had the IMF. It was the who's who attended the B7 that we organized. We did a great job. But I can say this without exaggeration, that when I came to India for the B20, what India has done with the B20, with the G20, has knocked the ball out of the park. It has raised the bar. The way in which India has staged the whole year of its presidency of the G20, holding dozens of events in dozens of cities, bringing in leaders and world experts in different fields throughout the year, culminating in the B20 and then in the G20. And I can say that India showcased itself, but also brought the world together. And this was a G20 in which more than ever the world is now looking to India, but also India saying to the world, this is what we have done, for example, the Aadhaar card and the data stack that India has now opened that up to the rest of the world. To bring the world together at the G20, an announcement is made of a transport corridor which will go from India via the Middle East to Europe. That could, some experts say, could increase trade by 40% along that route. What a great initiative to announce. And climate change initiatives, biofuels announcements along with the United States and Brazil, non-stop announcements at the G20 of initiatives that are not just talk, but are actually going to be acted upon. And even with the sad war in Ukraine, the G20 made a very strong statement that it is against conflict, it is against invasion of other countries' territories, and it very categorically said there should never, ever be any talk of, let alone use of nuclear weapons. And in terms of actual initiatives at the G20, there were 112 outcomes at the G20, almost double the previous record set by any host country in the history of the G20. So I give full credit to Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his team, and especially to my friend Amitabh Kant, the G20 Sherpa, and my friend Harshvardhan Singla, the G20 coordinator, the former Foreign Secretary of India, who I've worked very closely with. And we had Rishi Sunak, our Prime Minister of Indian origin, present at the G20. And that was a great thing for India, back there with his wife Akshata, who is, of course, the daughter of my dear friend Narayan Murthy, who was co-chair of the Indo-British Partnership in 2003, 20 years ago. When I was appointed as the UK co-chair, he was the Indian co-chair. And I remember the first words he said to me was, "I have never met a bad Parsi." And his wife Sudha, who worked for years for the Tatars, when she said to me, when I met her for the first time, "I've never met a Parsi who cheats." So I'm very proud to come from this tiny little community, the Zoroastrian Parsis. There are less than 100,000 of us in the world, over half of which live in India, in cities, mainly Bombay, but of course also in Hyderabad. And our Zoroastrian Parsi community has achieved phenomenally well. I would say per capita of achievement more than any other community in the world. Why? Why has it done so well is something I would like to research. One of the reasons they're so respected is they always put back in not just the Parsi community, but into the wider community in which they live. And time and again, you will hear people saying, well, we would like to work for a Parsi company because we know we're going to be treated fairly. So Mahatma Gandhi said that Parsis in numbers beneath contempt, in contribution beyond compare. So if I conclude now, my 20 minutes are almost up. I think the UK-India Free Trade Agreement is something we're all looking forward to. I worked very closely with the UK government to negotiate the UK-Australia Free Trade Agreement and the New Zealand Free Trade Agreement, two very comprehensive agreements. And I've been working on the India Free Trade Agreement with the UK as well. We're both very keen to get this done as soon as possible. It'll be the biggest free trade agreement ever that India has done. It'll be a free trade agreement that will power ahead the trade, business, and investment between our two countries. At the moment, trade is over £30 billion, but that is just scratching the surface. We should be doing many times that, multifold that in the future, and a free trade agreement will help it, make it easier to do business, easier to invest in each other's countries, including bringing down tariffs, enabling services, enabling people to work more easily, travel more easily, as well as, of course, education and students. The largest number of workers in the UK under our points-based immigration system from any country in the world are Indians who are working and helping our economy, whether it's in IT companies or whether it's a national health service, where without Indian doctors, the National Health Service would collapse. So this free trade agreement also needs to take into account the fifth and sixth largest economies in the world in absolute terms, India being the fifth largest, the UK the sixth largest. But they're very different economies. One is a country of 67 million people, another is a country of 1.4 billion people. One is a country, the UK, with a per capita income of $45,000 per person, whereas India is a per capita income of $22,600. India is developing. India is growing. India needs to be a big power, respected as a big power, and it's only a matter of time that I think that India will now become a member of what will not be the G7 anymore, but the G8, a recommendation I made at the B20. And furthermore, I think India needs to be made a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. So the Indian Express has left the station. And I predict India today, the fastest growing major economy in the world, will by 2060 be the largest economy in the world. Thank you.
Great, sir. Thank you so much for providing an account of your personal journey of somebody who was a Hyderabadi, has moved to UK and made it so big, and expressing so much of optimism about not just the personal growth and the entrepreneurial journey, but the entire way in which the Indians are making it big in that country, the UK, as well as India becoming very big as a force to reckon with in the world currently. I think the smooth transition of discourse that you made from personal journey to the transition of India from being an underdeveloped country to a leader now that is being recognized as the fifth largest economy has been very nicely interwoven. And it looked not like a lecture, it looked more like a story that evolved. And there are several layers to that for us to actually take a note of. And I have made notes of all these things. The influence that you had in the initial years from your grandfather and subsequently by the impact that your father has created on the people who followed him, tells a very strong and powerful tale of how leaders are made. And leaders are made because of their contributions, and they also influence people, and several other leaders are produced because of that overarching influence, although they hail from different domains. This is precisely the context and essence of WiseViews leadership conversations. That's why we have sought permission from you to speak to us. A leader of your stature, a leader of your background, influencing us and so many around the screen who will pick up some wonderful distilled lessons and apply it back in their own domain. I'm extremely happy. I cannot thank you more for your valuable presence today. So we'll now move, sir. There are so many people. One of the professors who has joined from Pune, Professor Rukshin, has mentioned that she is proud of being a Parsi. You have actually connected several dots, and a lot of people are going to text now. They're already texting the message.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful community, wonderful journey, and wonderful optimism that you bring up for India, not just in the context of G20, but in the context of economic power that India would love to rise, and also address the issues of poverty alleviation on one hand and the issues of climate change on the other, and make sure, I mean, as you have sent the message of G20 is not to have any conflict with the world and never talk about the nuclear weapons, but work together and make it a better place for all of us to live and well. Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much. We'll now begin the cluster number 1 of the questions and answer sessions. I'll request you to bear with us if we spill over the time beyond what has been promised by you. It is only out of excitement that we tend to speak a little more, but we would love to listen to you. We would love you to talk more and more with us. And there are several questions coming up. I'll now request Professor Prasad to come in, and we'll begin the cluster number 1. Over to you, Professor Prasad, and thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rao. Thank you, Lord Karan. It has been an excellent exposition of a journey which has covered so much of terrain, from the community to a city in Hyderabad, to a successful entrepreneur, to having a top-class brand in a country, to being in academia, to being in national business associations. I think it's such a vast terrain. And this sort of multiplicity is the kind of thing that is required in today's world in very, very different ways that people need to take up in order to bring success to to themselves and to all others. Thank you very much, sir. So I'll ask a connected question to begin with. It's personal. How do we reach our goals, sir? You've covered so much of terrain in your life. You've seen, past so many milestones and so many goals. What are the lessons that you can draw from your life which you'd like to share with the audience?
Thank you very much, Dr. Prasad. The most important thing I've noticed when we hire people, for example, I hire for will rather than skill. Ideally both, but it's the will, it's the attitude that matters. And I think if we can have an attitude that is a mindset that is always curious, a mindset that always wants to learn, what some people call the growth mindset, that you are always wanting to grow as an individual, learn as an individual. However old you are, lifelong learning becomes embedded as a part of your life. So it doesn't finish at school, it doesn't finish at university. You continue learning throughout your life. And I think that's the most important thing. And side by side with that is to be creative. I think you need to be very, very creative. And we need to encourage our children to be creative from a very young age. And I think people box creativity into, oh, musicians or artists are creative, but people who are engineers or doctors or accountants or lawyers are not creative. Well, everyone is creative and should be creative, because if you can be creative and innovative, it is a huge added value. It is one of the greatest secrets of the success of a small country like the UK is the creativity and innovation that has taken place here over the decades and centuries. And then, of course, there is luck. Now, the best definition of luck that I ever heard was in the Harvard Business School classroom. Luck is when determination meets opportunity. And it is, you're not determined, you will never even see the opportunity. And I picture it like waves that go past me in life, where if you're determined, you might just catch one of those waves. If you're not, those waves will go past you all your life and you will never be lucky. So determination meets opportunity is the definition of luck that I like. And another, a great spiritual leader in India explained to me that Sadhguru explained to me when we were flagging him off in London last year, when he went on a journey to spread the message of saving the soil, of saying that there should be at least 3 to 6% organic content in soil. Very important. And he rode his motorbike all the way from London back to India overland. And I said, good luck, Sadhguru. And I said, this is the definition of luck that I've heard in Harvard Business School classroom. He said, I like that definition. But he said, luck is also about timing. And he was so right when I look back at my career. If it's timing, if you are ready, but the market is not ready, it won't happen. If the market is ready and you're not ready, it won't happen. But if you're ready and the market is ready, then you get lucky. And when I started my business, Cobra, Indian restaurants at that time, there were 3,000 of them. Foreign beers were getting more and more popular. Today, there are over 12,000 Indian restaurants, curry restaurants in the UK. So I timed it correctly when I started my business.
Excellent, sir. I think all the points, the growth mindset, the need for creativity and innovation in all walks of life, whichever one is in, the determination meeting opportunity aspect, which is what we call luck. And lastly, the timing aspect. I think all of these it kind of is a continuum. All of them are interrelated to each other. And if it all comes together, I think then that's the kind of message that you're giving, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I come to the next question, sir. As you rightly mentioned, there are currently a lot of plethora of issues dogging the world, and there is leadership needed to steer the way ahead. Now, looking at what's happened in the G20, what is the kind of leadership in organizations or perhaps across countries in today's situation that is relevant? What did you see in G20 which is different and which you feel would help countries to move ahead together with lesser conflict, and which can also therefore be used in organizations?
Yes, what the G20 does is bring together the 20 biggest economies in the world, but also other countries are invited to the G20 to attend as well. And so you get a very diverse group of nations. Most of them are democracies, but not all of them are. Please forgive my dogs barking in the background, but not all of them are democracies. So they come from different backgrounds. Yes, so it's bringing together very diverse countries together in the G20 and getting them, despite their differences, to work together. And that's what's very, so that I think is the biggest thing, is as the motto of the G20 is bringing the world together. That's what it's doing, to try and do things that are important and find common ground that everyone can agree on for the benefit of the whole world. So this transport corridor from India all the way to the UK and to Europe, that is all the countries there working together, as opposed to China's Belt and Road Initiative is very much a Chinese initiative by China individually with countries, whereas this has that approach of collective approach where everyone's working together. And that's what I like about the G20, is the bringing people together. And I saw that at the B20 in a fantastic way, where you could frankly discuss trade imbalances, trade priorities, and it worked beautifully, where you could make that into a big argument, and you could make that into conflict, but you can also make it into something constructive, where acknowledging differences and saying, well, right, here we are, that's the reality, how can we work together? And I saw that in front of my eyes.
Fantastic, sir. I think given the kind of environment we are in, you have given us a good example of what could have happened, and that is the what has happened, the economic corridor initiative. And you have put some values in front of us that is about bringing together, accepting the other for what they are, being very open and listening to each other, and then moving from conflict to construction in that sort of a terrain which happens. And that sort of a collective approach, which makes it very win-win. I think that sort of thinking will help not just countries, it will also help individuals as well as organizations. Thank you very much, sir, for the points. I move to the third point, sir. From your perspective, how do you see India leveraging the momentum gained by G20 presidency in enhancing its global influence. To be specific, where do you see India moving, say, till in another 10 to 20 years using this sort of a platform, or, kind of leveraging it?
Yes, India made more of the B20 and G20 than any other country has in history. And that's a fact. In my opening remarks, I spoke about the 112 outcomes, which is almost double what any other G20 in the past has achieved. So it's raised the bar, it's knocked the ball out of the park. But with anything, you can do that, and you do it in a sustained period over a year. And I mean, I'm fortunate I visit India regularly, at least 5, 6, 7, 8 times a year. And throughout the presidency year, you couldn't travel anywhere in India without noticing India's G20 presidency. It was front and center. It was a matter of pride. So in life, everything also, what you make of something. You can have something with what do you make of it? How do you make the most of it? And then with anything in life, it's the follow through that counts. And the follow through is very important. And also, you're building momentum for sustainable achievement. You can't be a one-day wonder or a one-year wonder. You've got to be a multi-year, multi-decade wonder for years to come. And that is the attitude that I can see for India, that it is just advancing in such a way that the world is looking to India with such respect now. There are 2 superpowers now in the world, the United States, America, and China. Soon there will be a 3rd superpower. And also what is very apparent in India is the alleviation of poverty. 400 million people have been taken out of poverty, but there is still a way to go. The development has to continue. One of the things that struck me when KTR came and made a presentation as a minister in charge of industry and commerce and technology in the state of Telangana to businesses in the UK at the Indian High Commission just recently, and I made the closing remarks of that event. And I picked up on one thing that he said. In his whole presentation, he gave lots of facts about all the big companies, global companies like Microsoft and Google, and all of them coming and opening up huge offices, research centers in Hyderabad, employing thousands of people. All that's very impressive. But the fact that really stuck out to me was he said that since he's been involved, the per capita GDP in Telangana has more than doubled. That's what you've got to be striving for, is how can you increase per capita GDP? Because then you're making your citizens better off. So can we get that $2,600 per capita in India up to where we are here in the UK at $45,000? And we're nowhere near the highest in the world. There are countries that have a higher per capita GDP than the UK has. And we've got to, here in the UK, try and make our per capita GDP better, because then we're making our citizens better off.
Thank you, sir, for giving us the early indications of what can happen and the kind of attitude which is being shown to make that happen over a longer period of time.
Thank you.
I'll now come to a question which gets in all the areas. So, you've been a chancellor in a top-ranked university. You've been an entrepreneur. You've been leading industry associations. Now, UK has done a lot of work with respect to employability and bridging the industry academia gap, and it's evolved over the years. I mean, new things, and CBI has also played an important role in that. You've been the president of CBI. What do you suggest for a country like India, particularly its higher education sector?
Yes, I am very active with education, as very kindly Sudhakar in his open remarks mentioned about my appointments at Oxford and Cambridge, and of course at Birmingham. And I see how important it is. The fact the UK, less than 1% of the world's population, has 4 out of the top 10 universities in the world, including Oxford and Cambridge. It has 17 out of the top 100 universities in the world, including the University of Birmingham. So that university education that we have, that is the best in the world, along with the United States of America, is very powerful. As our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said just this week, he said, if there is a silver bullet, it is education. And I think that if any government, and in India, prioritizing school education, college education, skills, and universities, and then lifelong learning, if you get that right, that is the most important thing. It gives opportunity to people. It gives aspiration. And that is what takes a country forward. And I think that my experience shows that India has done two things recently. It has opened up the ability for foreign universities to open up campuses in India. This is something for years I've been asking for. It was not allowed. Now, the top 500 universities in the world can open up campuses in India. Already an Australian university has announced they're going to be opening up in Gujarat. I think that's going to be tremendous. There are foreign top schools. Wellington College, which my daughter went to, which was founded by Queen Victoria in memory of the Duke of Wellington, one of the top schools in the UK and in the world, is opening up in Pune this month. Harrow School, the famous school that Jawaharlal Nehru attended, Winston Churchill attended, has already opened up a branch in India. So the more we can have of top education institutions opening up in India is going to be of benefit to India in a huge way. And I think we need to do that increasingly. Also, recognition of qualifications. Now we have a mutual recognition of qualifications between the UK and India. Furthermore, opening up the services sector, foreign lawyers, for years, I've been asking for them to be allowed to provide advice and practice in India. Now it's finally going to be allowed by the government of India. They will not be allowed to practice in Indian courts, but they can set up practices to advise Indian businesses and the economy, which would be a great benefit because British lawyers, for example, are the best, I would argue, some of the best lawyers in the world. So India benefits from that as well. So the more you open up the economy and have these reforms, it is only going to be to India's benefit and help it on its growth path even more so.
Thank you, sir, for highlighting a single point, and that is opening up and then various ways of doing it, particularly with respect to universities, schools, as also services and qualifications, which in turn will generate a multiplier effect across the board. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll take a pause here, sir. I'll hand it back to Professor Rao. We are at 7:21 Indian Standard Time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. The discussion cannot be better than this. We've been waiting to engage with you. Several questions are already coming up. I have a list of questions in front of me, but I will not take any of those questions. I will just ask one, and quickly I will ask the members and on the screen to raise their hand, and I'll open them up. Some of the members in the audience are your co-alumni from HPS Begumpet. Yours truly from Osmania University, as you all know. So we are extremely happy. We are eagerly waiting to talk to you. So my first question is, the G20 has been marked with one incident. The noticeable absence of Chinese premier in participating in G20 is talking about ideologies that will solve the problems of this world. The ideologies that is believed to be followed by the China is anti-West bloc and aggregating several other nations and fighting the Western bloc. Whereas the ideology of India that is being pursued is about aggregating several other countries, which is loosely called the Global South, to work in tandem, work in collaboration with the Global North. Now, in spearheading this ideology or this belief, how should India navigate dealing with China without actually ruffling any feathers and yet achieve the objectives of making some influence and making other countries benefit from this, what seemingly is constructively, collaboratively good to work with the Western bloc by aggregating other countries into what is called Global South? What is your advice? What are your suggestions?
India does a huge amount of trade with China, over $100 billion. Here in the UK, we do 100 billion pounds worth of trade with China. There is the reality of trading with China. We have a new integrated review of our defense and security policy, and it is very openly a tilt to the Indo-Pacific. Because the UK, of course, we have the European Union at our doorstep, 45% of our trade with 27 countries at our doorstep. Individually, countries like Germany and France and Holland are some of our biggest individual trading partners. The number one biggest trading partner of the United Kingdom by far is the United States of America, where 25% of our trade is with one country. But our tilt is very much towards the opportunities that are being presented by the phenomenal growth in the Indo-Pacific. And please note, people used to say Asia-Pacific. They don't say Asia-Pacific anymore. We say Indo-Pacific. And India is the growth potential. Countries like Indonesia and the growth potential. Countries like Vietnam and the growth potential. The whole region. We've just joined the UK, the CTPPP, the Trans-Pacific Trade Arrangement of 11 countries, which we're now the 12th country, which will help enhance our trade. We do overall over 100 billion pounds of trade with those countries. That doesn't include China. India now needs to, in my view, join more and more proactively security linkings as well. In the way that the UK is a major member of NATO, we're the second largest contributor to NATO. We're the second most powerful defense nation in NATO after the United States of America, 32 countries that make up NATO. And NATO is so important for the security of those 32 countries because NATO has an Article 5 principle: an attack on one NATO country is an attack on all, and all of them will defend that one country. The only time it's ever been used was after the sad 9/11 incident when NATO Article 5 was implemented. So India being part of alliances that are that big and that strong, with UK maybe a small defense force, but our defense force is one of the most respected in the world because our elite forces, including the Gurkhas and our special forces, are very well respected. Our Air Force, the Royal Air Force, the Royal Navy, our 24-hour, 365 days a year nuclear deterrent that is around the world, the nuclear submarines, is a very powerful deterrent to have. India is a very powerful defense country. And I think trade and security go hand in hand. So India needs to work even more closely on a military basis, exchange of students, exchange of cadets, joint exercises. For example, we had a joint Air Force exercise with the Indian Air Force in the UK recently. I was, of course, very happy. It was called Operation Cobra Warrior. And it's a very successful air operation that we had over here. Similarly, India has joined Quad, the security arrangement between the United States of America, Japan, Australia, and India. And I'm suggesting the UK should join Quad to circle the world. We have an alliance including the UK as well. So this is where I think the future is going to be, is more trade alliances, more security alliances with friends and allies like the United Kingdom. We are on the same wavelength. We have the same rule of law. We have the same principles and values and of being societies that embrace diversity, societies that are wonderful, wonderful countries with creativity and innovation, ancient histories, ancient civilizations. We have a lot to offer each other, and have the most important thing is the trust. And to get trust from anyone as an individual, to get trust from another individual, one of my Harvard Business School professors said you need three things. It's a triangle. You need to be authentic. You need to have the logic. You need to have the ability to deliver what you're promising to deliver, the knowledge, the ability. And the third is empathy. Are you in it for yourself or are you in it for them? So if you're authentic, you have the logic, you have the empathy, you can get trust from people. And I think the UK and India have huge trust between each other.
Amazing, sir. That's a very, very broad-based answer addressing that issue of how to navigate the next few years, especially when China has taken a stand that is very, very different. Either enlarging the BRICS or adding more countries because of their partnership or trade and financing with countries which required projects, becoming a bloc to counter the Western bloc, vis-a-vis Indian clout, which it can partner with forces that are rightly aligned with our own philosophy and ideology for security, for trade, and still balance it. And at the end, you have mentioned very beautifully, how do we elicit trust while doing all these things? Some of the countries that now who are kind of waging a cold war are not eliciting that kind of trust. And trust comes from your being very authentic, knowledgeable, and capable of actually delivering what you promise. And the other one is being empathetic. Amazing. These are lessons not just for countries, but also for organizations and individuals at all levels. Thank you so much, sir. Before I move to Yeah, I can clearly see Captain Prabhakar. Captain Prabhakar is an alumnus of Hyderabad Public School, Begumpet. Captain, over to you if you're ready to ask the question to Lord Karan.
Yes. Good evening, sir. Lord Karan Bilimoria. This is G. Prabhakar from HVS Begumpet, batch of 1989. Pleasure listening to you, and I had the pleasure of hearing you launch the centenary celebration at school. And on the topic of G20 President, what's next for India? I think two things I can tell apart from what all you explained, the landscape of what all vision you have. I think next India will be, we've given the global leaders for the past so many years, the best CEOs and the top entrepreneurs in India from our school. I think the next two things which India can give for the next 100 years is with Tata's taking over Air India once again into their cradle. I think Tata's will be a global player with an Indian heart. And I think on the education landscape, which is one of your keen areas of education, I think HPS has launched the HPS vision for 2050, which is, I think we should take pride in saying that the Cambridge education system has also been launched in our school. And hope to see many more CEOs and global leaders coming out in the next 100 years. I think that's the best thing HPS can do from what's next for India in the next few years, along with Tata as the new airline of India. Thank you, sir. Pleasure talking to you, and hope to see you at the centenary celebrations closing ceremony at school. Thank you, sir. Good day.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you, Captain. I thought you were asking a question, but you both of you are talking about your alma mater. Thank you. Thank you for that nice.
Okay.
Great. We'll now go to Dr. Prasad Rao. Please raise your question if you're ready. Or Professor Anita Raman, with our Commander, Wing Commander Gorpati, you can also go ahead and ask.
Good evening, Lord Karan. I am a veteran Wing Commander from Indian Air Force. Happy to note that in Royal Air Force. I'd like to know what kind of captain.
I didn't quite hear that, the question.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, what is
Oh, okay. Yes, I can explain that. What I heard is, so I, of course, you've heard that I have my father's side of the family are mainly an army family. But my father was Commander-in-Chief of the Central Army in India. His father, Brigadier Bilimoria, was one of the few Indians who was commissioned at Sandhurst between the First and Second World Wars. Cousins of my father's were generals. One was the Vice Chief of the Army. A cousin of my grandfather was the Chief of the Navy, Admiral Karsachi. My mother's side, another cousin of my father was a group captain in the Air Force, Indian Air Force. And my mother's father, J.D. Italia, D.D. Italia's son, was a squadron leader in the Royal Indian Air Force and flew during the war and served in the Royal Indian Air Force during the Second World War, including in Delhi at Air Headquarters. So I've had some Air Force in my family background. And then I was very lucky that this famous squadron called 601 Squadron, which was a squadron that distinguished itself during the Second World War in the Battle of Britain in North Africa and in Malta, which then after Second World War flew Vampires. In the Second World War flew Hurricanes and Spitfires. And there were several aces. Sadly, it lost several members through bravery, but they made a phenomenal contribution to the Second World War. And it was a very well-decorated and distinguished and respected squadron, converted to Vampires, the jets, after the Second World War, and then was disbanded. And a few years ago, the Royal Air Force decided to resurrect 601 Squadron and to recruit 30 honorary group captains who were leaders and captains of industry to be commissioned officers. So I'm enlisted and commissioned, and we are advisors to the Air Force. We're advocates for the Air Force. We're ambassadors for the Air Force, and we are fully informed, take part in activities, get taken up in aircraft and to stations, and really learn about the Air Force. And in that, by being informed, are able to advise the Air Force, create links for the Air Force, speak for the Air Force. And in my case, I'm lucky. in my role in the House of Lords, in the upper house and Parliament, I'm able to speak on defense matters, including, where relevant, about the Royal Air Force.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that background, sir. Professor Anita Raman, you may please ask your question.
A very warm good evening to you, sir. I hope I'm audible.
I can hear you clearly, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. Sir, it was wonderful listening to you this evening. And, you know, so many topics, and you're so inspiring to many of us. Perhaps, you know, we are very proud to be a Hyderabadi after listening to you. My query is, do you have any suggestions or key takeaways for Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, especially towards the area of climate finance? And what is the role of higher education in perhaps bridging the gap? I think I asked too many things, but you may perhaps give your views on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Firstly, thank you for your kind words, which I greatly appreciate. Specifically, the SDGs, of course, are terrific. And I think that the UN SDGs, every one of them that we strive to attain. And when it comes to climate finance, this is something where I'm very proud to say that London is more and more almost a headquarters of climate finance, of green finance. In fact, I'm going to be meeting later this afternoon, my friend, the former Lord Mayor of London, and he is a great advocate of green finance. And we've now in London got a variety of options, and all the development that is taking place. For example, we are very, in the UK, advanced in wind power with offshore wind, onshore wind. India is very advanced in solar power. Hydrogen is being developed, which I've spoken about earlier, all around the world, including in the UK in a big way. But all this requires finance. And Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, has spoken of the trillions and trillions of pounds worth of green finance that will be required in the years to come. So I think you've hit upon a very important point. And of course, education is very important. I gave you the example of how, through collaborating with universities, we were able to develop the world's first hydrogen-powered train, retrofit hydrogen-powered train. So it's that sort of collaboration that's going to be absolutely crucial, and universities playing their part. And I will say this like a stuck record. The more you have of universities, business, and governments working together, and the more you have of universities, governments, and business working together cross-border, for example, between the UK and India, the more powerful it is. The multiplier effect is a fact. And when it comes to research, as I said, the field rate of impact is 3 to 5 times higher than doing it individually.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. One more question, if I may ask.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. When you were talking about integration, you know, market interface, you know, with the businesses and education, we find there is a huge gap in, you know, at least Indian sector. So do you have any suggestions or key takeaways where we could learn from your experience of UK?
Yes, I think this has got to be done in a way where everyone realizes the value of it, and you've got to have people who are the catalysts for it. And for example, the Confederation of British Industry, we have several universities, including the University of Birmingham, who are members of the Confederation of British Industry. So we have roundtables of the universities themselves, but also the universities meeting with leading businesses. And then you get them talking and exploring opportunities and working together. Similarly, in India, the Confederation of Indian Industry, our sister organization, the CII, does phenomenal work in the field of education and working with universities and bringing universities and business together in the same way I'm sure that FICCI does as well. So you need leading business organizations like the CII who are doing it to be the catalyst, to be the conveners, to make this happen.
Thank you so very much.
Mr. Sudhakar, can I ask one question, sir?
You're already there. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. First of all, Lord Karan Bilimoria, many thanks for joining us today. I am Murli from Vedavak Systems from Hyderabad.
And thanks to ICFAI for enabling this. It's a wonderful actually event, and you have given valuable information. Many thanks to you, sir. My question is your positive attitude made you successful, or your knowledge made you successful, or combination of both made you successful, sir?
I mean, the first thing I would say is that success is a very relative term, and it's not a destination; it's a journey. And I don't consider myself very successful. I feel I've still got lots more to do and lots more to learn and lots more to try and achieve. And I think having a positive attitude helps. It's not always easy, especially when you have times when you've got crises, you're trying to survive, let alone grow. And I've nearly lost my business 3 times. So it is not always easy. And to be resilient is very important, to have that strength, to be a strong brand. I mean, the 3 reasons when I've nearly lost my business over the past years, the 3 reasons I survived in each one of those 3 circumstances that were all very different. Well, one is having a strong brand. Second was having a loyal team, and including the support of your family if you're lucky to have a family. My wife supported me through all the crises. And the third is always to do it with the right principles and with integrity. There's no point trying to cut corners. It's always trying to do it with the right way and playing with a straight bat. So if you have a strong brand, if you have a loyal team and family support, and if you practice integrity, you can get through any crisis. And then the knowledge aspect, I really do believe that the better educated you are, it helps. And education is one of the most powerful things in life. And I've always prioritized it, and I'm very lucky to do it, and I enjoy it. And I'm lucky to have the opportunity to continually be educated. I'm about to do some major research at Cambridge University, which I'm very excited about.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. The discussion is throwing up a lot of questions, and what is even more interesting is the kind of responses that we are receiving from you. We are templating these responses to see how we can capture them as key takeaways for the evening. And it is not over yet. There are a couple of questions more before we close, sir. With your permission, I'll take 1 or 2 questions.
Thank you.
Dr. Lavanya, you can go ahead, please.
Good evening, sirs. Thanks a lot for the wonderful talk, sir. My question is, there is this saying, from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. So how do you envisage the role of succession leadership in today's VUCA world?
If I interpret thank you for your question. If I interpret your question about succession, people sometimes ask me, the best lecture I ever attended in my life was given by Professor Clay Christensen at Harvard Business School. And his message was very simple. He said, have you ever stopped and thought, what is the purpose of your life? And I ask each one of you, have you thought, what is the purpose of your life? And linked to that, how will you measure your life? And if I look upon that, asking that question myself, I think one of the most important things is how can you, in what you've achieved in this life, inspire generations to come after you in the way that my great-grandfather, Didi Italia, 4 generations ago, from what he did in his life, being a successful entrepreneur, being a philanthropist, being a public servant, being a member of the Rajya Sabha, has inspired me 4 generations later. If I could do that, I would have achieved something that would be to leave a legacy that inspires generations after you.
Excellent.
Leave a legacy that will inspire generations after you. That's a fantastic takeaway for us. Chitraji, you would like to ask a question, or Prasad Rao Garu, if you're wanting to ask a question, we'll go at that. Otherwise, I will have my own question now, sir. So, very unfortunate development that has taken place in the recent past is the straining of relationship between India and Canada. The diplomatic exclusions and expulsions that was warranted by unfortunate events that happened over the last 1 week. How do you foresee from here an approach to reproach and an approach to actually streamline our foreign policy, our stance from India's point of view? India has always been a soft country, but now with this measure, in some circles, it is being talked about that with the National Security Advisor acting very firmly and swiftly, India is now going to be treated just like Israel. It's hard, decisive, wherever it is required, we will strike it. Between these two messages, what do you advise and how do you read the next course of action for India in the Committee of Nations?
Yes, I'm so sorry, sir. I have to rush now. I'm already running 15 minutes late. But I do, if I may just very briefly, India has to have good relations with countries. On the whole, Canada is a country that has huge potential to be a great ally of India going forward. And situations like this have to be addressed, have to be sorted out, because looking ahead, like India and the United States have huge potential going forward, like India and the UK have this special relationship. Canada should be a country in that mold that is one of India's trusted partners going forward in every way. That's where we've got to get to. And so I am hopeful that these situations will be solved, and India and Canada should be very good friends going forward and have full trust in each other. That's the most important thing. Have trust in each other and work together with respect and trust.
Great, sir. Thank you very much for this beautiful answer. Trust and partnership will help us because Canada is a great partner. There's a great potential between the two countries to be explored and to work together and move forward. I want to once again thank you on behalf of everyone here for your wonderful presence. Very, very patient responses to all of the questions ranging from politics to economics to the future, and also questions related to your own background and some of the questions very personal. Thank you so much, sir. We couldn't have had a better discussion on 121st Leadership Conversation this evening. I thank your entire team for coordinating with us tirelessly to make this happen so seamlessly. And I'm indebted to you and your entire office, your chief of staff, and the entire team out there. My special thanks. And we would love to meet you in Hyderabad and in London at the next best opportunity. Thank you once again on behalf of ICFAI.
Thank you, Sudhakar. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for all your questions. And it's been a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be available next week again at 6:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. We are going to be present here with yet another leader on 29th of September, and that is Mr. P.C. Balasubramanian. He's going to talk about leadership lessons from Rajnikant. This is going to be yet another different talk for the 122nd session. Please tune in. Till such time, please Google, please search about what has happened in G20, what are the decisions taken, and what is lying ahead of India in emerging as a leader for Global South and influencing some of the decisions for all the countries with the ideology of construction and not confrontation. Thank you so much. See you all next week and good night.